You're back. You made it for another episode of the Sharpshoot with AuSSy. I'm your host, AuSSy, and boy, do we have a mediocre show for you this week. Sorry, no. This isn't Raw. This is actually the Sharpshoot. We have an awesome show lined up for you this week. We're going to talk Brock Lesnar's new contract, whether or not Batista still wants to come back. How do you like me now? It's true, it's true. All the segments you know and you love, only on the Sharpshoot with AuSSy, and it all starts right now.
The Sharpshoot with AuSSy is brought to you in part by TRN, the Talking Wrestling Network. Subscribe on YouTube today. And by RopeBreakWrestling.com. Get out of the bleachers and get in the ring.
We start with news surrounding the WWE World Heavyweight Champion Brock Lesnar. It appears that Lesnar has reworked his contract in some form or fashion and is now opening up his schedule to the WWE, which is going to be bad news for those people that hate Brock Lesnar and claim the only reason they hate Brock Lesnar is because he's a part-timer. Now listen, because he opened his schedule does not necessarily mean that he's going to be on Raw every single week, but it appears that he has told WWE he is willing to work every single pay-per-view up until WrestleMania as long as they pay him the amount that they agreed on before on pay-per-views, which is a pretty penny. We're not exactly sure what the figure is, but one thing's for certain, that's the fact that WWE can barely afford the dollar menu at McDonald's right now. I'm not necessarily sure that they can afford Brock Lesnar for every single pay-per-view. So that remains to be seen exactly where they go with that. But it's good news to know that Lesnar is willing to work all these shows up until WrestleMania, where it appears he's set to drop the strap, most likely to Roman Reigns. We'll get to that a little bit later on the show. Now there's some other news regarding Brock Lesnar that says he is potentially being booked for the final SmackDown before Hell in a Cell. I believe it's in Wichita. I'm not exactly sure. But all I know is that Brock Lesnar, there's been a lot of rumors this week that he's going to be on SmackDown. And I don't think Lesnar's been on SmackDown for something like 12 years. Something crazy Brock Lesnar has been away for on that show SmackDown, which he really was a big part of there in the early 2000s before he left. It would be absolutely excellent to see Brock Lesnar on SmackDown. I just don't see it happening. What I see is, or what is being reported is that Brock Lesnar was on a commercial in the area promoting that episode of SmackDown. I'm not necessarily sure that means anything. All cards are subject to change as always, and I just don't see Lesnar working a SmackDown. Lesnar costs a lot of money, like I alluded to in the first bit of news about Lesnar. I don't think they're going to waste him on a show that not a lot of people are watching unless they're really getting set to push SmackDown. I highly doubt it, but I would love to see Lesnar on SmackDown. I just don't see it happening, so nobody get your hopes up on this one. Speaking of part-timers and people that made SmackDown pretty popular, we've got Batista. News surrounding Batista as he's shaking the radio waves, joining Chris Jericho's podcast, Talk is Jericho, and speaking about his disappointment in his latest return to WWE, saying that he was struggling back and forth with creative a lot of time, and that really didn't make him happy. A couple quotes he had there, I believe he said that he felt like creative was just arguing with him just to argue with him. He would suggest an angle, they would say no, 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 and then they would eventually end up going with the angle, but it's just too late at that point. So, I definitely hear Batista out on this one. We really want to have him back. It appears that he wants to come back, but it's only under one condition. Looks like he wants to come back for one more run with a closing send-off match against Triple H. My problem there is, obviously, he's going to lose to Triple H if it's going to be a retirement match. Why not get a young talent over? I know Batista has said before he thinks that Triple H is the Michael Jordan of the WWE. I'm not necessarily sure I would go that far. But Batista, you got a mind for the business, or at least you claim you do. Why not help get a younger talent over and get this next generation of stars in by having a retirement match with somebody like that? I really, really know you want to go in probably as the face here and get a final face send-off. But why not help out the young guys? From news about young superstars on to news about old superstars, and that's RVD. Unfortunately, it seems like RVD, I said last week on the show, was closing up his most recent 90-day run with the WWE. More bad news. It is now appearing that many people around the business feel that RVD is done for good with WWE. Not necessarily sure if there's any backstories there, if there's any issues between WWE and RVD, but it appears that RVD is done for good. I'm not sure if that's just with WWE or if that's with wrestling in general. It seems as if WWE has really misused or underused RVD in his most recent run, just kind of throwing him in there. No really, real rooted feuds. Again, I blame creative for that. RVD is a useful tool that they could have used to get some newer guys over. It appears that they didn't want to do that at all, and it appears that RVD doesn't want to do this at all anymore. If it is indeed the end of the road for RVD, just want to send a thank you. I mean, I will always be a big RVD fan myself, and I mean, I'm not really sure there's much else to say about RVD besides thank you. One of the most influential smaller guy wrestlers, definitely defined the ECW era, coming in, bringing that attitude to the WWE, the high-flying maneuvers, the high risks, everything. If this is the end of RVD, no doubt, WWE Hall of Famer. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about RVD. I want to know your favorite RVD moment, and you can tell me by tweeting me at @IamAuSSy or at Rope Break Wrestling using the hashtag Sharpshoot and using the hashtag RVD Moment. On to this week's WWE Network Pick of the Week. And normally, I would say, hey, we're also going to give you a promo pick. Last week, WWE put the kibosh on the show. They cut us off. We had a Jake the Snake Roberts promo in there as our promo pick of the week. WWE blocked the content, shut the show down completely, and basically said, hey, AuSSy, we see the ratings you're getting on YouTube. We're getting a little bit nervous that more people are watching your show than are watching SmackDown. Totally understandable, WWE. I will back off. From now on, we're going to ixnay the promo pick of the week just because we don't want to show any of WWE's content. Of course, they got to be making money any way that they can. Can't let a small guy or a small promotion like ourselves get over using any of their material there. I apologize for trying to show a Jake the Snake Roberts promo to show my support for Jake the Snake, who is now appears to be recovering pretty good. Anyways, end rant. This week, my WWE Network pick of the week is going to be we're starting to see a theme here. It's going to be, once again, the Monday Night Wars series. The show keeps getting better and better. This past week, we had the DX episode of Monday Night Wars. You get to see the whole genesis of D-Generation X and how that factored into the Monday Night Wars. It's a really interesting episode to check out. I definitely recommend it. Even though WWE is striking me down, I'm still going to recommend some of their network material. And then from there, we're also beginning to get Monday Nitro episodes, so definitely check those out on WWE Network. It's time for the highest rated segment on our show. It's true, it's true. And this week, it's all about publicity. The WWE garnering a lot of publicity, whether it be negative or positive, for trying to garner publicity. Two instances this week we saw on Monday Night Raw and on Tuesday where the WWE was clearly reaching out to try and pick some publicity, try and get some viewers, some eyes for next week when they go up against Monday Night Football for the first week of the NFL season. Now, the first thing that they tried to do was extend an invitation to Michael Sam, the first openly gay NFL football player, and did that work? No, it did not work at all. It was stupid. In fact, a lot of people were pretty upset, taking to Twitter, taking to Facebook, showing their complaints and their concerns about WWE trying to make a cash cow out of Michael Sam, giving him an open mic. Let me tell you why I disliked that. Wasn't that it was Michael Sam, it was because WWE has their own first openly gay athlete or superstar in Darren Young, and they didn't say a thing about Darren Young at all when he came out. Yes, they've done the no-hate things, but Darren Young hasn't had an open mic. He's a WWE superstar. You know, I'm not a Darren Young fan, to be honest with you, but why not promote your own superstars from within rather than going out there and nitpicking? Listen, I understand. The whole idea is for them to try and get eyes off of football and onto Raw. That one probably would have worked, but it's not happening. The next one, however, probably isn't going to work, and that is Jerry Springer showing up on the show to do a discussion with the Bella Twins. And it looks like WWE's really dipping low here. But let me tell you, just wait. Just take a look at this show. Give this segment a chance. A lot of people right off the rip saying how stupid it is. The IWC just going out there complaining up a storm like we do best. I was not, however, one of the people complaining about this. I think this segment has potential. Now listen. If you're saying Jerry Springer coming on for a segment with the Bella Twins is stupid, what did you have to say when Mae Young gave birth to a hand in the Attitude Era? I bet you loved that segment because it was in the Attitude Era, but you hate this segment now because you love to complain about everything that WWE does. Give it a chance. You won't know until you watch it. Listen, it could be terrible like we're all anticipating, but it could actually end up being pretty funny. The Bellas are taking a lot of heat for this feud. I don't think it's their fault. Once again, I think creative is to blame. They really dropped the ball this past Monday night with those Nikki Bella growing up Bella segments. They felt completely unrealistic the entire time. Cheesy and corny music playing in the background. Clearly red lines that had nothing to do with what Nikki would have said herself. It was all written by some jabroni in the back. And in fact, it absolutely sucked. The segments were completely unrealistic, and that's what you're shooting for with a segment like that is reality. And they failed there. But with that being said, I'm going to give this Jerry Springer segment a chance. Jerry Springer does bring an element of reality. I'm not necessarily sure it's going to be excellent or great or anything, but I'm saying a lot of people are going to be turned off right away just because it's Jerry Springer and they want to find something to nitpick and complain about. I'm telling you, relax. You never know until you try it. Don't you know that, jabroni? It's true.
It's damn true.
In this week's Throwback Thursday segment, we'd like to take a minute to mourn the loss of Joan Rivers. Now, I know a lot of people out there are probably saying this has nothing to do with wrestling. Who cares about Joan Rivers? She had so many plastic surgeries. Whatever. Whatever it is you're going to say, it doesn't really matter. It's still a soul, a human soul that we've lost on this day. And whether or not you remember, Joan Rivers actually does relate to wrestling. Here's just a few of the photos that we're going to use for this week's Throwback Thursday of Joan Rivers in wrestling. Take a look. It's that time of the show where everybody loves to hate the Auss. And without further ado,
how do you like me now?
this week's How Do You Like Me Now is a little bit of a piggyback off of last week's Sharpshoot. This week I want to speak about Roman Reigns and why I do not think he is ready for that top spot whatsoever. Roman, I'm sorry, I like you, you're a good guy. You do have that potential, no doubt. You're just not a diamond yet. And I think there's several reasons for that. Number one being the terrible creative and terrible booking that is happening in WWE of late. Honestly, I think we need to get a guy like Paul Heyman or somebody. I don't think that he would do it, but anybody like that, somebody that's got some product knowledge. Jump in there, take the reins, no pun intended. Anyways, with Roman Reigns, the reason I wanted to speak about it this week on the show, after doing the Sharpshoot kind of on him and the character development last week, is because he came out and absolutely destroyed a segment to open last Monday night's Raw. Now, granted, he did have some help from John Cena, but we were seeing an absolutely awesome segment from The Authority and Jericho in the ring there. Then you got John Cena comes out, and then you've got Roman Reigns comes out, and those two absolutely drove that into the ground. Terrible, terrible, terrible. That's all I have to say. First off, you've got John Cena coming out there, And that's just in and of itself annoying enough because you knew it was going to happen. Whatever. He needed to make his statement. My problem with Roman Reigns and why I don't think he's ready yet is because he's not relatable. I'm sitting here, I'm on the show, I'm talking with you, we're having a conversation, you're probably yelling back at me, Roman Reigns is ready, you're just another hater, blah, 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 blah. What I'm telling you is that you can relate to me. We're both average Joes here. Whether you want to believe it or not, we're both average Joes here. I know I'm pretty good looking, but I'm an average Joe, and I'll admit it. The thing about Roman Reigns is he doesn't come off as any type of relatable. Any guy that talks like this, let's face it, if I did the podcast, if I did the show, and I looked into the camera and I talked like this the entire time, welcome to the Sharpshoot with AuSSy. It just wouldn't be entertaining. You wouldn't watch. Maybe you're going to shut it off now, but either way, there's nothing good about what Roman Reigns does on the mic. For a little while there, it looked like he was improving, but now I have to say, we're continuing to take steps backwards. And I honestly feel like it has a lot to do with creative and people getting in his ear telling him, you've got to be, intimidating force, whatever. Like Matt Donato has said before on Rope Breaks React After Raw show every Monday night, Matt has said before that he plays two kind of gimmicks, that big intimidating character, and then he's got the smooth, the ovary exploder character. You got to pick one or the other, bud. And the fact of the matter is, the only guy that can get away with talking in that deep, dark voice is The Undertaker. And you're not The Undertaker, not even close to that type of gimmick. There's no reason why this guy can't come out and talk like a regular human. Nobody talks like that. You don't go and meet somebody for the first time and they say, hi, my name is AuSSy. No, just talk, bro. Like, we know you're a human. I don't know what you're trying to convey, but I don't like it at all. And that is one of the main reasons why I do not think he's ready for the top spot. I think a guy like Daniel Bryan, even though his mic skills are not the best, he's relatable. Even on the mic, he talks like a regular guy, just one of you or I. And that's exactly what Roman Reigns doesn't do. And of late, it's what John Cena doesn't do. So I don't think that Roman Reigns is ready for the top spot. I think his in-ring work is there. It's fine. It's good enough. But his on-mic stuff is just no good. It's not good. Creative, anybody, if I can reach out to anybody, please fix this, please. But seriously, Roman Reigns fans, how do you like me now?
How do you like me now?
All right. Don't hate. Roman Reigns has got a lot of potential. I think that down the road he can definitely be a #1 guy. He's got the look. He's got the in-ring ability. He really needs to work on his mic skills. That's all I'm saying. There's no denying it. I'm sorry. Unless you like those over-the-top superhero guys that nobody can relate to, then, I'm right there. Let's leave it at that. But right now, we've got the mailbag for the very first time on the show. It's our mailbag segment. We've got a few different questions rolling in from you guys on Twitter. And the first question is going to come from Westlin Coleman. Westlin Coleman, big-time rope break guy. He's always asking questions, always trying to get on the show. He says, will Brock Lesnar lose the titles sooner rather than later? Could we see him face off against the Viper? First off, there's no way he faces Randy Orton, at least in my opinion. Randy right now is a heel, and so is Brock Lesnar. It doesn't make any sense for those two to collide, although that would be a pretty cool matchup to see. I just don't see it happening. Right now, I think the only way Brock Lesnar loses the titles is if it's to a guy like Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins or Ambrose when he comes back. I think those are the three prime guys. The only other guy I could see him losing to besides Cena is Cesaro, and they just aren't building him up enough for me to believe that that's actually a possibility. So right now I'm going to say definitely not facing Randy Orton, and I don't see him losing the straps in the near future unless they decide to go back to Cena here, which would just be absolutely pointless and stupid in my opinion. The next question comes from Kyle Cullihan, and Kyle Cullihan asks, who are your top 5 worst WWE champions of all time? This is a tough one. Just thinking off the top of my head, honestly, I did not prepare for this question. Actually, the first time I'm reading it right now, so forgive me if I throw somebody in there. There's probably somebody down there that had a couple-day reign that shouldn't even count. But right off the name that comes to mind is The Miz, probably being the worst WWE champion of all time. Some other guys I got in there are Miz, Alberto Del Rio, Diesel, I didn't really like as champion. Psycho Sid was terrible. And I'll say Sheamus. I just don't think Sheamus was, or ever will be a good WWE champion. Just not a guy I can buy as the WWE champion. So I guess my list would be Miz, Diesel, Psycho Sid, Alberto Del Rio, and Sheamus as my 5 worst WWE champions of all time. Some other guys that I throw out there are, I think Mr. McMahon had a reign for like a day. I wouldn't even count that. Big Show, terrible WWF champion back in the day. Should have never held the belt. Bob Backlund, I know that a lot of people think of him as, one of the great champions, 2 extremely long reigns. I never really liked him. Didn't like any of his title reigns. So I guess I'd throw Bob Backlund in there in the honorable mention. I'll probably get chewed up for that. But my 5 guys, burgers and fries, are going to be The Miz, Diesel, Psycho Sid, Sheamus, Alberto Del Rio. So that's my top 5 worst WWE champions of all time. And the final question this week comes from Johannes Butel. He says, do you think WWE gave a spoiler to an IC title feud on Main Event with Damien Mizdow? I don't know. I guess you can look at it from any way there. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't think there's really any spoilers. I think that we're going to see eventually, we're going to see the Dolph Ziggler-Miz feud for a while. Eventually, I think we'll end up seeing a Miz and Sandow feud. I don't know if that's going to be for the title. And then, of course, I could see them having a Ziggler versus Sandow feud, maybe for the title, if Miz can't get the job done or whatever. Who knows? All I know is I really like the Miz and Mizdow storyline right now. I like those two together, but I don't think that they're going to ever really intertwine Sandow into that picture unless the Miz has the title. It'd be interesting to see, but that remains to be seen. So I'm not 110% sure on that. That was this week's mailbag, and I thank you guys for asking those questions. Again, if you're not sure how you can ask questions, you can do so by going on Twitter and tweeting at me at @IamAuSSy or at Rope Break Wrestling using the hashtag Sharpshoot. You can ask any question. You can use something relative to the storylines going on right now, like Johannes and Westland did, or you can just ask me any random question about WWE or any random question, period.
Cena turned heel. LOL, how about kick out at 2? C-Nation for life, so what you gonna do?
That brings us to this week's Sharpshoot, and it's a topic that I'm very excited to shoot on, and that is brand extension. A lot of people ready to argue with me on this one, and I'm ready to combat the arguments that you guys have. Please, if you disagree with anything that I have to say on any of the show, including the Sharpshoot and what I'm about to say right now, please let me know. Tweet me at @IamAuSSy, at Rope Break Wrestling. Use the hashtag Sharpshoot. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are. Your voices can always be heard on the show, like I've said about 1,000 times. If you don't know that by now, maybe you should turn the show off. No, don't turn the show off, because you really want to know about this week's Sharpshoot. Like I said, brand extension, something that I'm actually really passionate about. And it's really simple. The case that I have to make is right now there's an influx, there's a large amount of talent in the WWE roster that is not being used or not being used properly. What we're seeing right now, a lot of people just getting thrown out onto the scene, thrown into the ring for fillers. A guy like Damien Sandow, I like the gimmick he's in right now, but let's face it, he doesn't deserve to be in that gimmick. Just a year ago, he was a contender for the World Heavyweight Championship. We saw him put on an excellent match with John Cena, and then suddenly, poof. And a lot of people will make the argument that that's John Cena doing his best Barry work. I think that that match did a lot for Sandow. It legitimized Sandow. He didn't need to beat John Cena to look good. He looked great in that match. But anyways, on to the brand extension that I'm speaking of here. I have a proposal for the WWE. Split the roster in half. Throw half the guys on Raw, half the guys on SmackDown. You'll get more eyes on each show, and each show will mean more. When you give more character development to each show, you focus on character development, telling stories on Raw with characters that you want to have in the main event. And then SmackDown, same deal. Like many people have said before, SmackDown, when they had the original brand extension, was an opportunity for another up-and-coming or young superstar to get that spotlight that maybe they wouldn't have gotten on Raw. A guy like Brock Lesnar can come into SmackDown, make a huge impact. A guy like John Cena can come into SmackDown, make a huge impact, and rise to fame. All the while where he's not spending any time on Raw, and you're still getting the other guys that you want to get over on Monday Night Raw. I think they need to go back to that, because right now what we've got is a pretty stale, full of filler Raw, and then SmackDown is an absolute joke. Nobody's watching it. They're going to move it to Thursdays, and nobody's going to watch it still, unless they do something like I'm proposing here. Take a look at the way I would split the roster in half for Raw and then SmackDown. I'm not saying it needs to be Raw versus SmackDown, but what I am saying is you need to split up the rosters, give them each the TV time and the character development that they need. Again, you don't need to have separate pay-per-views and shit like that. Each week they can go, or each month they can go all at it on the pay-per-view. You can have matches from each show on the pay-per-view, but you need to split the roster up right now to give each guy, or each girl for that matter as well, their TV time and the character development that they need. We need to see compelling stories on WWE TV. That's what we are not seeing right now, and that is why nobody is currently interested in the product. So, that's this week's Sharpshoot. Again, let me know if you agree, if you disagree. I want to combat. I will argue with you on Twitter about it. I will bring you onto this show next week and slay you like a dragon on this show. If you're interested in going topic to topic with me, or punch for punch, blow for blow, whatever, let me know. At I am AuSSy, at Rope Break Wrestling, hashtag Sharpshoot. That about does it for another episode of the Sharpshoot with AuSSy. I am AuSSy. That's where you can find me on Twitter, once again, at I am AuSSy. Also, go check out the guys at TRN, the Talking Wrestling Network. Subscribe to their page. Follow them on Twitter. Like their Facebook page. And you better have already done that for Rope Break Wrestling. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Like us on Facebook. And, of course, follow us at Rope Break Wrestling. We'll be back next week with another action-packed show. Send your questions in for the mailbag. And, hey, your voice might be able to be heard. Once again, it's the Sharpshoot. I'm AuSSy. Have a good week, guys.
Time for bonus Sharp Shoot.
A lot of controversy surrounding last night's open letter from Vince Russo, former head writer of WWE and WCW. He wrote an open letter to Vince McMahon, Triple H, and Stephanie McMahon outlining a lot of his concerns with the show right now. And basically, to be perfectly honest with you, I almost agree with every single point that Russo makes in the letter. Now, I'm not a huge Vince Russo guy, never have been, probably never will be, but states a lot of facts in that letter. If you're not familiar with the letter, go over to ropebreakwrestling.com. We've got a full article up on that where you can read what Russo has to say. But basically, he's griping just like you and I every week. But the normal, or not the normal, but the notable thing that you want to take a look at, what he says in the letter, he points out that in the Attitude Era, they had a mentality of trying to outdo last week every single week, asking themselves, is this show better than last week's show? He's basically criticizing the WWE for not doing that right now. Because let's face it, the past 2 weeks, Raw has been absolutely terrible. Not even mentioning SmackDown and how absolutely horrible that has been. So, as far as Vince Russo's letter, a lot of people not big fans of Vince Russo, but hey, what he said last night, it's true.
It's damn true.
The Sharpshoot with AuSSy is brought to you in part by TRN, Talking Wrestling Network. Subscribe on YouTube today. and by RopeBreakWrestling.com. Get out of the bleachers and get in the ring.